and welcome. You're watching France 24's Tech Show. I'm Julia Seeger. Extraordinary, provocative, spectacular. That's how moviegoers and critics alike are describing the much-awaited sequel of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. And there's already talk about its awards season potential. In this edition, we look at their vision of the future. Plus, we'll test the Revive tag by French startup Yes It Is. As the name suggests, the idea is to revive old objects and give them a second life by sticking a tag on them and making them connected. Blade Runner 2049 was released in French cinemas. It's the much-awaited sequel of Ridley Scott's masterful original featuring Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford, and it's already creating a huge buzz. Deeptika Laurent has more.
It's an unenviable task, providing a sequel to a cult film 35 years later.
Was built off the back of a disposable workforce.
The dystopian follow-up features fragile hero Ryan Gosling as Officer K, a sleuth for the LAPD whose task is to hunt down and retire rogue bioengineered androids and replace them with a new generation of docile robots. However, K's case becomes a search for self-identity, and one man may hold a crucial clue to his past.
I know. What do you want?
That's Rick Deckard, a.k.a. Harrison Ford.
I'm still alive, which I think is a good thing, and still interested in it. But I think we have, I think it's always a good time to make a good movie.
The sequel follows on in the same dystopian world just 30 years later. Scott's first film, Blade Runner, was released 35 years ago and tanked at the box office. It later found fame as a sci-fi cult film, inspiring other films like The Matrix and Inception, but a sequel was always risky.
When they say they're going to make a sequel, our first reaction is often, no, please don't go there, let the film be as it is. When we see this film in its entirety, we realize that it's a huge success, and I'm awestruck at how they managed to make this film 35 years later.
I always told you, you're special.
It was a living, breathing universe, and it was really impressive, and I felt necessary for me to spend as much time there as possible so that I wasn't impressed.
Variety magazine has called the film a stunningly elegant follow-up, while the New York Times film critic has said we're in the presence of a masterly visual tactician. It's one of those rare sequels that's creating positive buzz, released just in time for Hollywood's award season.
And let's dig a little bit deeper and go back to Ridley Scott's original cult film, Blade Runner, released in 1982. And for that, I'm joined by James Say, a research associate in fine art at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. You've seen the movie more than 50 times. You often describe it as a brilliant movie and say it was predestined to reach underground mortality. Why was this movie ahead of its time? Did it predict any specific future trends?
It's not so much the future trends that it predicted, it's really about how it expressed its central theme, which is artificial intelligence and technogenesis, the Frankenstein theme. So that is a key cornerstone of science fiction since the beginnings of the genre. So it's not really about the technology it predicted, it was more about its look, about its retrofitted view of a future Los Angeles. But the central theme and how it dealt with that central theme of humanity being able to manufacture life was the reason I think it's become such a cult favorite over the years.
Now, what about the second installment, Blade Runner 2049? Is it set to predict future trends or have an accurate outlook on the future?
I think the main thing about the sequel is how it's continued in the somewhat gloomy viewpoint about how artificial intelligence and gene manipulation technology is transforming human culture. It proposes that the scenario of the replicants in the first film who go rogue and try to discover the secret of their origins and what the difference is between them and, naturally born human beings, has continued and deepened in the sequel, so that you now have an entire underclass of artificially created human beings that perform the menial tasks that real humans, who are obviously, it's implied, privileged by virtue of being naturally born, won't bring themselves to do. So in a way, it's a kind of dystopian allegory of many of the kinds of extreme inequalities and class structures that are current in the world today, and that is something that all of the best science fiction does. Rather than being about the future as such, it's more about turning the spotlight onto what contemporary culture and sociopolitics is all about.
Jim Say, thank you so much for that. And it's time to welcome our in-house expert, Dan and Jay Cattlecard. Hello and welcome, Dan.
Hello, Julia.
This week, several Nobel Prizes were given out. We're going to talk about the Nobel Prize in Physics in specific. It was won by 3 American scientists for their work on LIGO. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, and it was able to detect ripples in the fabric of space-time. What does that mean, Dan? Please explain.
In 2 words, it means they were able to detect gravitational waves. Gravitational waves are, as you mentioned, ripples in the curvature of space-time. They are mostly a product of interactions between 2 massive bodies, like 2 black holes. Now, black hole is at the end of life cycle of a star, and generally a black hole, or the star that reaches black hole, is almost 25 or 30 times the size of our sun. So you can imagine the enormity of these massive objects. So when these 2 objects interact, in this case, there was a merger of 2 black holes about 1.3 billion light years away. So it took the gravitational wave to reach Earth 1.3 billion years. So that's how far the wave was. And the reason why this the detection is so impressive is because they were able to detect this negligible disturbance, which is that's why it took so long, because the prediction was made in 1916 by Einstein's general theory of relativity. It's only now in September 2015 that we were able to detect these gravitational waves.
And now how does the machine work, LIGO?
LIGO, it essentially consists of 2 long arms. Each arm is 4 kilometers in length. As you can see here, there's a source of laser, and it's split into 2. So one beam goes in one arm, the other beam goes in the other arm. At the end of these 2 arms, there are mirrors. So again, it gets reflected. As you can see here, one beam is traveling. And once it gets reflected, again at the beam splitter, both of them, one beam is allowed to go through while the other is reflected towards the detector, as you can see on the right. Now, at the detector, when there are no disturbances, these interference, the waves, they cancel each other out. But if there's a slight difference, or there's a slight movement of the arms as is a result of these gravitational waves, it takes light more time to travel this distance. And because of that, you see that there's a flicker of light. So the moment there's a flicker of light, it is an indication that there's a gravitational wave.
Well, thank you. We're going to move on now to Test 24. Revived by French startup Yes It Is was awarded the 2017 CS Innovation Award in the category of digital imaging. And understandably so, Dan, it's quite an innovation.
It is. It is a bridge between the physical and digital. So, for example, this Revive product is essentially an integrated vinyl record. What's integrated in it is an RFID NFC chip. So, because of this interesting addition, you can listen to music of the vinyl record directly on the phone. Of course, you can play it here as well on a vinyl player. But if you can't be bothered to put the disc on it, all you have to do is use an application. On iPhone, you need an application, and you just touch to the cover with the disc inside, and you get to hear the music. So, for example, even before buying the disc, you can try out these numbers. You can get a preview of them. It's a short preview of 30 seconds. If you like them, you buy them.
Right.
And along with it, there's a social network. So, for example, this in this case, there's the artist Wax Taylor, who has composed this music. So.
And you can access other content.
Exactly. So through this social network, you can get lots of information. For example, if he's performing in your city, he'll let you know if he's performing in a city, at what time, blah, blah. He'll also give other updates about his upcoming songs, etc. So that's what is interesting. So this perhaps is the first time that there's a direct link between fans and the artist. There's a direct communication. So that's also quite an innovative feature. And secondly, it costs 25 euros, this vinyl record. So it's not that expensive.
Quite affordable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dan. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Tech 24, but do stay with us here on France 24.